My first recollection is arriving at a village near Srebrenici just to be totally engulfed by hundreds and hundreds of people. I thought I was standing in a movie, and I kept expecting somebody to say, okay, cut, and all these people with these gaunt, haunted faces, and they all got expressionless faces. It's like life had drained out of them, you know? Life was ebbing away. There was very little caring by the so-called authorities for the new arrivals. Nobody cared for the refugees. They were left for days on the street. No one cared anything about them. They arrived, you know, we followed a family through, and they'd been walking for something like 17 hours. You know, the mother carrying the little boy who'd been wounded by shrapnel in the hand. And he'd been wounded at the same time as his father. They came, they didn't know where they were going. They had no relatives and no friends. Where does this man recommend they can sleep? Where does this man recommend they can go?
I don't know where. This town has 60,000 refugees, and there's only room for 10,000. Have you seen how many people are sleeping on the streets?
We help them carry the sacks. I mean, it's a very, very small gesture, but this woman was toiling under two great sacks, and I must admit, I found one sack very difficult, but she had two of them. And it struck me that I can't believe that these people, they're people, and they didn't want to know. And when the father, he was treated in hospital, and it's very tragic to see the little boy on the couch and the father on the couch, and they've both been wounded. And but that one, as soon as that treatment's finished, they're out, because they can't have space in the sought-after wards, because you can only have room for so many. And it was never intended to be a hospital, more a clinic. It's not a place where you can get the best possible treatment, and even the surgeon, who I got to know quite well, was very honest about that. You would come in there, you would have an operation very quickly, your limb would come off, you would have your stomach sewn back in, shrapnel taken out as quickly as possible. If you were quite ill, you would stay in one of the wards, and the wards are abysmal. What the video cannot convey is the stench of unwashed sheets, unwashed bodies, of wounds becoming infected. I mean, they would always come and they wanted to show me everything that was going on. For me, I was a way of telling the world, for the first time, that everything they've said over ham radio is true. So whatever happened in the town, they would say, get Tony, get Tony. And they call me into casualty. All these little girls, there's about 5 or 6 little girls have been hit by shells. And there's a little boy as well. And there was 2 screaming. But they had very small injuries. But then there was the 10-year-old girl who was lying, and she had, you know, what I've heard so many times in Srebrenica and Sarajevo as well, what I call the death gurgle. Her eyes were going blank. And they'd been hit. They were out playing south end of town. And later on we went to the home, and not only her, but her 4-year-old sister had been killed. She was killed instantly. And the mother was distraught and was weeping and wailing. And it, like, you know, normal scenes, I think, in Bosnia. You know, it is normality. That's the terrifying thing about it. The medevac by helicopter was something that there was great uncertainty about, particularly by the Bosnian authorities. They didn't believe for one moment the Serbs will allow helicopters in and out of here, despite the fact that General Morion was very, very confident. After the helicopters took off with their first batch of wounded, within, I don't know, 2 minutes, they shelled. And it was artillery shell, because you could hear that one coming in. You get a huge bang.
Roger, I have more incoming, over.
The majority of shrapnel sprayed to the south, and that's why the 2 Canadian soldiers were wounded, because they were further south.
Don't move. Relax, guard. What's the name of the guard? Okay, relax.
When this huge, confused scene was going on in the hospital of patching up the Canadian soldiers. He lying quietly on a bench with this 5-year-old little boy who'd been badly injured in the southern part of town in a separate incident by a Serbian mortar. And it was hoped that he would be evacuated with the Canadian soldiers. But as we went back down to the soccer field was shelled again. So the French colonel who'd come in with the helicopters decided that there would be a medevac, but no landing on the soccer field. So they had to be winced up. But before the Canadian soldiers had been winced up, the baby had died in the arms of one of the Canadian soldiers. And it just seemed to me that it's a great injustice in some respects to these people that although we will put on helicopter flights when it's dangerous to evacuate UN soldiers, we're not prepared to do that for a 5-year-old boy who's an innocent victim. And it's the most tragic scene, you know, the father taking a little boy wrapped up in his golden plastic covering to keep him warm, sobbing uncontrollably. And his sobs and his weeping was drowned out by the blades of the helicopter as they winced up the Canadian soldiers and went off. And it seemed to sum up a lot about Srebrenica and Bosnia. That basically these people, you know, they come second.